Self-actualizing individuals are without a single exception devoted to something outside of themselves. That's what Abraham Maslow said when he was describing self-actualizers, as he called them. In his book, The Farther Reaches of Human Nature, which I quoted and referenced many times in my videos, he gives a pretty detailed and clear description of self-actualizers. And one of the main characteristics of self-actualizers is this fact that they are devoted to, invested in, and focused on something outside of themselves. So it's not self-improvement for one's own sake. It's not this infinite leveling up and boosting of one's own stats, to use the modern video game terminology. It's being devoted to something outside of yourself, even at the expense of what externally seems like your growth. Sacrificing some of your progress in certain areas of life for the sake of a cause that you're devoted to, a project, mission, community, or maybe a single person. And you also have, for example, Viktor Frankl echoing this idea. He said, he said that self-actualization is possible only as a byproduct of self-transcendence. Self-transcendence. What did he mean by that? He meant transcendence of being preoccupied with yourself, transcendence of self-centeredness, transcendence of being only focused on one's own needs and goals and wants. We also have Joseph Campbell. He spoke about this more in mythological than in psychological terms, but it comes to the same conclusion. And we talked, at least in my previous videos, for those of you who have watched them, and for those of you who haven't, you will have a chance to hear more about this, but myth is a source of eternal wisdom. So messages from stories carry psychological weight. In any case, Joseph Campbell talked about how when the hero is ready to sacrifice himself or herself for something or someone else, it is then that they reach a new level of their potential. And we see this in stories, don't we? We see it in both a more realistic, stretched out manner or drawn out manner, and we see it in this less realistic but impactful, epic manner where it happens in an instant. So for example, this more drawn out manner is when you see a character in a story who starts off as a bit self-centered, and then progressively, as the story goes, they are more and more focused on the group, the community, the group mission, the joint cause. You see, for example, also this in sports stories, where a player becomes more and more focused on the team, more and more devoted to the team. And then as a byproduct of that, or as a result of that, they grow as a player, but also as a person. And then we have these, as I said, less realistic, but equally valuable, let me tell you, equally valuable epic moments where in an instant a new level is reached. And we have to emphasize, why is it unrealistic? It's not just because it's physically impossible to go Super Saiyan. It's also because it is not possible to reach in an instant that new level of your potential. Maslow said about this, he said, self-actualization is a matter of small, sometimes mundane, and even seemingly insignificant daily moments. So there is no announcement, there is no notification, congratulations, you reached a new level. It's just stacking of small daily growth choices. But it is useful to have this epic representation of any message, and this one as well. And I mentioned Super Saiyan. I'm not the most knowledgeable fan or lover of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, because it's been more than 20 years that I've actually followed it as a series. And But I'm pretty sure that most of the coolest transformations come in a moment when the character is ready to sacrifice himself, or he's tried sacrificing himself and abandoning his life for the greater cause. And it is then that they manage to reach a new level of their power. A more recent example that comes to my mind is from Jujutsu Kaisen, Aoi Todo in the Shibuya incident. And apologies for those of you who are just not interested in anime references, but this is, as young generations say, peak fiction. And it really is. This Aoi Todo character reaches a state that visually, like how it's such high quality visual storytelling, because this character reaches a higher state of consciousness, a higher state of being, higher state of existence, that in its visual representation and all the details has actually so many things that are related to how Maslow described the peak experience. I also talked about peak experience in one of the previous videos. Maybe that concept deserves a long video on its own. But peak experience, one of the highest experiences that a human can attain. Well, this guy Aoi Todo reaches something that is like peak experience, but even greater. Why? Because he was ready to sacrifice himself for his best friend and brother, as he calls him. And I think it's beautiful, it's powerful, and it's more than just watching a story for the sake of killing time. It's eternal wisdom. That is how you reach a new level of potential. You stop focusing on yourself and just on yourself, and it's not just me. You abandon yourself to some extent. You forget yourself to some extent for another person, for a group of people, for a cause, a mission, a project. And that's how you reach new levels, greater levels of your potential. And I think this is important also because it asks you to reflect on what kind of message are you getting from the current modern space of self-improvement. Is that the message? I wouldn't say so. And you know what? I will not accept someone saying, "Oh no, when I'm listening to an online scammer who is usually deceiving young men, but then he buys his mother, a car or an apartment, that's him truly self-actualizing, being devoted to something outside of himself." I'm not buying it. If you're deceiving thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, scamming them, and again, all of you know what type of men I'm referring to here, who are deceiving young men, selling a distorted idea of self-improvement and personal growth. And then they are supposed to wash their hands by, and metaphorically speaking, wash their hands of the wrongdoing by buying their mother a car, an apartment, or an apartment. And that is supposed to mean that they are devoted to something outside of themselves because they want to do right by their mother or maybe their family, their loved ones, extended loved ones. I'm not buying it. I'm challenging you to consider and question. The camera shut off once again, signaling me to keep it shorter, so I will. As I was saying, my challenge to you is to consider who you are receiving quote-unquote knowledge on self-actualization from. We need to consider, are those people truly self-actualizing? I know some of them are not speaking about self-actualization in those terms, but self-improvement, personal growth. We are talking about the same thing. You have to consider, are they truly self-actualizing? Are they devoted to something outside of themselves? Or are they living a life of me, me, me? I want to level up myself. It's important. Again, I think as a society we are facing a crisis when it comes to the predominant message that is being shared on personal growth, self-improvement, self-actualization, however you want to call it. The second challenge, more enjoyable, is to find stories that reinforce this message, that you will find new levels of your growth, of your potential, of your existence by devoting yourself to something outside of yourself. Consume those stories not as binge watching or binge reading, consume them as reminders of where your true potential lies. Thank you.